Welcome back, thanks for joining me today on The King of Random. Recently I saw a product that looked like a stone archway with a hallway extending behind it as far as the eye could see. It was an illusion set up using a couple of mirrors and some lights to make it look like the hallway extended far beyond the actual dimensions of the product. I thought it was a really cool idea and I wanted to build my own, so the purpose of today's video is to show you how I'm going to build my own infinity mirror using a few easily available products. The primary supplies I'll need for this project are a mirror and a piece of glass approximately the same size as each other, some styrofoam, a couple of lights, and some window tinting. The other supplies I have around are equipment for building and decorating my infinity mirror. This mirror was originally a base plate designed to put candles on to decorate your home. I picked it up at a craft store for around $5. If you have a store near you that sells glass and will cut it for you to a custom size, you can often get that for fairly cheap. If that's not available, you can often pick up a picture frame with a glass front for pretty cheap. I have the white styrofoam from Lowe's. It's a 1-inch sheet of expanded polystyrene. This actually comes in a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet, but that didn't fit in my car, so I had to cut it down into smaller sizes, which will work just fine for this project. These battery-powered tea lights can often be found in any home decor section of a store, and I like these ones because they flicker, mimicking a real flame. The window tinting I picked up at an auto parts supply store. This particular film blocks 35% of light. You can go as high as 50%, but you don't want to go any darker than that or it'll be too hard to see through the front window of your infinity mirror. Before we do anything else with this styrofoam, on both sides it has a plastic coating. We want to peel that off so we have the raw foam. Because I cut this foam to fit into my car, a lot of the edges aren't straight, so I'm using my glass as a square to line up a new 90-degree angle. I've got foam to cut, so I'm going to be using our styro slicer that we've shown you in a few other videos. If you haven't yet gotten around to building yourself a styro slicer, don't worry. Most of what we're building today can be done with just a razor blade. The first thing we need to do is set up our mirror and our pane of glass perfectly parallel to each other a few inches apart. To start, I'll cut out a large piece of styrofoam to use as our base. I'll start with a base that's a little wider than it needs to be, and I'll cut off some extra later, but to start off, I'm going to take about 3 inches on either side of the mirror. Now that we've got our base, let's measure out 2 lines that we will carve down to become slots which will hold the mirror and the glass in place. You'll have to decide how far apart you want your mirror and your pane of glass to be. If they're closer together, the repeating light effect will also be closer together. Farther apart, the lighting will look more normal, but the effect will be a little bit diminished. I like to leave about 3 inches of space. With our lines measured out, we now need to cut grooves about halfway down into the foam. I'm going to use this handsaw. You want to be sure that the saw is perfectly perpendicular to the foam so that your slots are straight up and down. With the slots the way we've cut them, our pane of glass will fit into the slots, but our mirror is a little bit thicker, so we need to widen that slot so it fits well. To widen the slot for the mirror, let's just take a piece of sandpaper and wrap it around a popsicle stick and run it through the groove. We need to make sure that our mirror and our glass stay perfectly parallel to each other, so let's make another piece of foam that will go on top of the two and hold them straight up and down. This piece of foam I want to be about 1 inch narrower on both sides of the glass. This piece of foam in the end will be entirely covered up by the decorative parts of the infinity mirror. It needs to hold the pane of glass and the mirror in place, but it doesn't need to be as extensive as the base is. The grooves that will hold the mirror and the glass on our base are 3 inches apart, so if they are 3 inches apart on the top as well, the 2 planes should be perfectly parallel. Now, because my pane of glass is a little bit smaller than my mirror, my 1-inch thickness of foam is actually not thick enough to build a cap on top of this. So I'm going to cut another piece identical to this one, slice it on the lines that I've marked, and then glue it all together to make a piece that will hold our pane of glass and our mirror steady. That should hold our 2 pieces pretty well. Gluing styrofoam together can be tricky. Some kinds of glue will dissolve or melt your styrofoam. What I'm going to be using today is a very low heat glue gun. It's cool enough that the glue shouldn't melt the styrofoam at all. Feels like it worked pretty well. Trying to leave just enough room that the pane of glass will fit nicely. Of course, on this side I need to leave enough room for the slightly wider mirror. Just to reinforce the glue, I'm putting a strip on the outside here as well. Our styrofoam cap lines up pretty well with our 2 panes of glass, but it's still having a little bit of a hard time fitting nicely onto the mirror. So to make it conform even more perfectly to the shape, I'm going to use a piece of sandpaper on top of the mirror and carve it down like that. We've got our base and our cap piece, which are holding our mirror and our pane of glass perfectly parallel to each other. So now it's time to start adding some more pieces to make this a little more decorative. The first piece I'll add will act as a sort of facade. I'm going for sort of a castle theme on this infinity mirror. So what I want is a piece that comes up on the sides and just makes a nice face for the whole thing. On this cap, you can see one of the pieces of styrofoam sticks out a little bit farther than the top piece of styrofoam. So I'm going to trim it down so the two are flush. To make this facade, I'm actually going to cut 3 pieces of styrofoam, 1 for each side and 1 that will go across the top. I'll start by cutting a 2-inch wide strip from this styrofoam. Next, I'll measure the height so it comes up to the same place as the top of the cap. We will want our side pieces to overlap the glass a little bit, so let's use our handsaw and cut some more grooves. Looking good so far, let's add a few more details. With the cap piece and the 2 side supports added, I'm going to make a single facade piece that will raise up higher than the level of our cap. This area here is where we'll be able to see the glass, so this part of the styrofoam will be removed and the rest of it will stay. There we go, that looks pretty good. Now I want to add a curved archway, so I'm going to trace out our facade and figure out a good shape that will fit entirely on it. I don't want the archway to be quite as wide as the facade, and I'm going to have it come in just a little bit. I'm going to make that a little bit larger because I do want it to extend beyond the corners here. Alright, I'm going to give this a rough cut with the razor blade and then I'll go around all of the detail edges with the styro slicer. Beautiful, look at that. That will turn into a fantastic stone archway. Our decorative pieces are coming along nicely. Now I'm going to add a strip across the back of the cap and another piece that goes on top of the whole thing. Let's measure how high we need that strip to be. Now let's measure a piece that goes on top of the beam we just added and our facade to act as a cap on top of the whole thing. I do want it to extend about 1 inch ahead of the facade. This line represents the front of the facade, so I'm going to extend it about 1 inch beyond there. Well, I measured this cap piece that was going on top, and then I decided I actually want it to extend about 1 inch off to the sides as well. So I'm going to trace this out onto another piece of styrofoam, just adding a couple inches to the width. New piece cut, I like that fit a lot better with it extending off of the sides as well as the front. I want to start gluing things together so it's more structurally sound as I finish it up. But before I do that, there's a few more decorative elements I need to add to these pieces. The structural and the decorative pieces are both ready to go, but before we start assembling everything permanently, we need to clean the mirror and the glass and attach our darkening film to the glass pane. Got static electricity making our styrofoam stick to everything right now. Let's take our darkening film and stretch it over our piece of glass. Then we'll cut out a piece, leaving a border about 1.5 inches wide around the whole pane. The film has a dark side and a clear side, which is just used to make it so it doesn't stick to yourself while you're preparing it. For this next step, I'm using this window film application solution, but you can also just use soapy water. Spray both the glass and the film so that as we lift the film and place it onto the glass, it's not sticking to everything everywhere. So at this point our film is on our glass, but it's still got all sorts of this soapy liquid inside it, so we need to use a sort of squeegee to press all that out and make sure that the film and the glass make contact. Since I've got it laying around, I'm going to use a piece of styrofoam as my squeegee, starting in the middle and pushing all of the bubbles out toward the edge. That sounds horrible, but it is working. Our film is now pressed down over the whole glass pane, so I'm going to take the razor blade and trim off all of the extra. We've got the film attached to the glass, and the glass and mirror are both nice and clean, so let's start assembling everything. When you're putting the glass in, make sure that the side with the film on it is facing the mirror. The film might take a day or so to completely dry and stick to the glass, so when you're putting it into the little slot, be careful that you're not causing it to peel up. Just to make sure that the test fit works with our facade piece here. I'm liking that too. All right, let's take our glue gun and start attaching some of the pieces more permanently. This piece I could attach right now, but I am going to be doing some painting on this, and to make sure that I'm easily able to paint the inside edges of some of these parts, I'm going to attach this piece later. I am going to trace where it is so that I know up to what point I can add the paint. Now we've got most of it built, and all we need to do is add a couple of side pieces to seal it off. I glued one side on but not the other because we need to have access to be able to put things in between the two reflective surfaces. We have our two lights, but we don't want them to just sit in the box, so let's make a little stand for each light. There we have it, all of our pieces of the infinity mirror in place. All we have left to do is a little bit of painting and secure everything down. I've got the whole thing covered in a layer of acrylic paint, and now just to make it pop a little extra, I'm going to use some black ink in my airbrush. There we have it, the decorative housing for the infinity mirror is now complete. All that's left to do is secure these two bases down inside, turn on the tea lights, and watch it go. And now, instead of gluing this on, because we want to be able to reach in and out and turn the tea lights on and off so we don't run out of battery, I'm going to be using a couple pieces of bamboo skewer poked through the foam to hold this piece in place. There we go. Now we can easily pull out both of these bamboo skewers when we need to reach in and out. There you have it. That is how you can build your very own infinity mirror. Of course, with this one, the lights are not super powerful, so it's more like a really, really long mirror. It hasn't quite reached infinity. I chose a castle theme because I thought the orange color of the lights mixed really well with that idea. But you don't have to use this theme. If you have a different color lights, you can go with a different design theme. Even if you have the same color lights, you can choose what you want yours to look like. I just like castle stuff. I think the effect works the best if your infinity mirror is pushed up against a light colored wall. It really helps with the contrast of the darkness of the tunnel with the light of the wall, making it look like it's going through what it's resting up against. One more thing that I want to mention is this actually looks better in real life. We're pretty limited by the low light abilities of our camera, but when you're seeing it with your eyes, the flames really pop out and they do seem to be disappearing into the wall. I really had fun showing you how I built this today and hope you had fun watching it. Thanks for joining us for this project, and we'll see you in the next one. Talk to you then. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, my ears are gonna ring for days after that. Now it looks like the tunnel of lights is going right through me.
Hey guys, did you know that we're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well? All at The King of Random, and every platform has a different purpose. So go scroll through the histories, check out what we're doing. I'll see you there.